Greetings and welcome back to Kindred Groups, an experiment in resurrection life from St. Andrew's Presbyterian Church. In this learning lab, we are going to be exploring the resurrection accounts from each of the 4 canonical Gospels, named for the good news which they contain. These are 4 stories of Jesus' life, death, and resurrection. Each have their own perspective, written by different authors or storytellers for different audiences at different times. There were dozens of such stories written in the first centuries, but these 4 have been passed down from generation to generation and are shared by Christians across time and space. At the risk of being heretical, they're kind of like versions of the Superman story. Jerry Siegel or Dan Jurgens, Christopher Reeve, Dean Cain, or David Corenswet. We may be able to have our favorites or least favorites. That might shift over time. Argue which is more or less true to the original or to the core of the character, but each lend their own unique perspective on the same story, more or less. Perhaps less heretically, think of a more recent historical figure like Winston Churchill, for instance. How many separate biographies, interpretations, and perspectives exist for this man who lived a mere 100 years ago? How many perspectives are needed to encapsulate a complete human life? While there is sometimes a lot made about the gospel narratives that were banned from the Bible, it actually is historically pretty amazing that we have 4 separate and distinct accounts that do not always completely agree. In this learning lab, we'll be looking at these 4 gospel accounts of the resurrection and explore what they have to say to us about our faith and the life of resurrection we are called to. Today we begin with the gospel that we attribute to Mark. Maybe John Mark, maybe someone completely different. We honestly do not know. According to biblical scholars, this is likely the first of the 4 to have been written. It is the shortest, which is especially present as we look at its resurrection account, which suddenly ends with the women running from the empty tomb. This is so unnerving, in fact, that it seems that later scribes added on to the end with their own additions. We will explore the original ending of Mark with a mindfulness experiment and discuss why it may have been written this way. This week, I encourage you to explore your own need for certainty in your faith and what role the mysterious and unknown plays. If you'd like to go deeper, you can study the other endings of Mark's account and explore where they may have come from. Now I invite you to quiet your heart and your mind, and to join me in a time of reflection as you imagine with me what it might have been like to hear this ending for the very first time. I invite you to get comfortable, to put away your phone or other distractions. You might want to close your eyes or to cut down on too much information coming in. I invite you to breathe deeply in and out. Imagine yourself as an early disciple. You gather regularly at Chloe's house with other disciples to hear the stories of Jesus of Nazareth and to break bread together. You have heard stories from people who met him, those who heard him preaching and teaching, parables that he told. You heard the stories of those who had been healed by him. You've heard stories and letters from other assemblies or leaders in this movement. On this particular evening, you gather at Chloe's house to hear the whole story of Jesus all at once. A storyteller stands up and begins the tale starting with the baptism of Jesus. It quickly turns to the beginning of Jesus' Galilean ministry. Your mind reels as you hear these stories, some that you know and others that are completely new to you. You cry when they tell of Jesus' arrest and so-called trial, and again when he is crucified, a sight you know all too well. Finally, the story gets to the end. Probably the story that you have heard the most, the story of the empty tomb. When the Sabbath was over, Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of James and Salome, brought spices so that they might go and anoint Jesus' body. And very early in the first day of the week, when the sun had risen, they went to the tomb. They had been saying to one another, "Who will roll away the stone for us from the entrance to the tomb?" When they looked up, they saw that the stone, which was very large, had already been rolled back. As they entered the tomb, they saw a young man dressed in a white robe sitting on the right side, and they were alarmed. But he said to them, "Do not be alarmed. You are looking for Jesus of Nazareth, who was crucified. He has been raised. He is not here. Look, there is the place they laid him. But go tell his disciples and Peter that he is going ahead of you to Galilee. There you will see him, just as he told you." So they went out and fled from the tomb, for terror and amazement had seized them. And they said nothing to anyone, for they were afraid. You sit in a stunned silence. The storyteller gives a slight nod and sits down to signify that the story has indeed ended. You have heard many times about the women going to the empty tomb, but for it to end so abruptly, it's strange. Obviously, the women told the story, or else you would not have heard it. But the sudden ending makes you feel what? Small noises and conversations begin around you as people process the experience that they have had. Your friend turns to you and says, "What do you think?"